I'm going to ask you a question, well, which in this context is probably self-evident. Who in this room would like to see Judaism continue into the next generation? Like I said, self-evident. You didn't even feel like you have to raise your hand, right? You wouldn't be here if on some level you weren't interested in seeing who we are continue into the next generation and the next generation. And in fact, based on figures from the Jewish Population Survey, 85% of Jews, that means there are some who aren't interested. Now, how do I know that? Because they do it with their feet. They vote by raising their children as non-Jews, so they're not interested. But 85% of Jews in the entire population of the United States want to see Judaism continue into the next generation. Now, I raise that, and I say that, and it seems so self-evident, but I'm going to tell you a story that illustrates, how's that? That illustrates how even though we think it, we sometimes don't do it. And it's about a couple that actually was members of a congregation, this congregation, family I've known for about 20 years. And I received word in my email box that they resigned from the temple. This happened about a year and a half ago. So I was surprised. I've known them for 20 years. They've been temple members for 30 years. So I called them. I said, let's have lunch. So I went to the club, and we sat down. After all, I'd officiated the marriages of their children. I'd officiated funerals for 2 of their 4 parents. My wife and I had socialized with them on countless occasions. So I sat down at the club with them, and I said, so why'd you leave? Why'd you decide that you didn't want to stay on as members? They said, we don't use the temple. In fact, we've only been twice in the past year. 20 years of membership, personal friends of one of the rabbis, gone, left. Now, what makes it so confusing is that this couple is heavily involved in the Jewish community in other areas. They are major donors to Federation, leaders in the Federation. They're involved in a couple of other organizations, all of which are involved in some way in strengthening the fiber of Israel, the fiber of the Jewish community, in what they would not be considered marginal to the Jewish community. So I asked them the question that I asked you at the table. I said, do you want to see the Jewish people continue into the next generation? And they said, of course we do. So I made my case. I said, well, then what's a synagogue? I mean, a synagogue is on the front line of those organizations that are creating a Judaism that will last into the next generation. After all, we're the organization that educates Jewish children, nursery school through high school, every synagogue. We're the organization that has outreach to Jewish young adults with programs like here, we have the W Group. We're the organization that has classes for Jewish adults, has lectures, has programs, has services for everyone. If that's not securing the next generation, then what is? And I looked at them and I said, this is what you've devoted your lives to and still devote your lives to, a Jewish future, and we're doing it right here. They nodded, they smiled at me and said, They didn't rejoin, but they thought I made sense. They said it just wasn't worth it. So here's the problem, you see. In spirit, they're with me. 100%. They were all over that idea. Judaism has to continue into the next generation, and they see themselves as responsible. But when it came time for Tuchas Af and Tish, I can say that on the Bima, can't I? When it came time to put their Tuchas on the table, anybody doesn't know what Tuchas is? The person next to you will tell you. They balk. Because this thing costs serious money, Jewish membership. Now, with apologies to Visa, let me do some numbers. Religious school, $1,200 a year. Temple membership, upwards of $3,000 a year. Jewish summer camp, at least $4,000 for 4 weeks. Summer in Israel for a Jewish teen, $7,000 plus shipping and handling and shopping. Trip to Israel for a family of 4 with flights, $18,000 if you get a good deal. 13 years of a day school education. It's a good thing you're sitting down. $250,000. And the next generation committed to Jewish living, you know the commercial, priceless. The next generation committed to Jewish living, priceless. So now, here's another story. And this story took place at an amphitheater outside of Jerusalem. It was called the Birthright Israel Mega Event. 7,500 American college students who were in Israel for the span of 2 weeks gathered, partied, celebrated. Anybody there for Birthright? You went, but not for Birthright. Okay. So we're there and danced to Israeli rock music, socialized with each other. All of them were at some point along their 10-day whirlwind tour of Israel. And this program called Birthright Israel, from its inception several years ago, has brought more than, a lot of numbers I'm throwing at you today, has brought with them has brought to Israel, more than 170,000 Jewish adults over the few years that it's been in existence. Now, it's the brainchild of what the Jewish Journal calls mega donors. A lot of megas going on here. One of the mega donors was Charles Bronfman, and the other was Michael and Judy Steinhardt, names that we might be familiar with. They first funded the entire program. Now it's been taken over and shared. The funding has been shared with private donors, and actually the Israeli government has stepped in and through a program and helps to end federations. I have to be careful. My wife is an employee of the federations. I have to get it right. They have an annual budget now of $104 million. That's how they get those kids to Israel. Now, there's no doubt that is a priceless experience. That is one of those opportunities that clearly 170,000 college students believe, and their parents believe, is worth experiencing. And ask any kid who's come back, or, better yet, decided that since they were already there, maybe they'd stay another couple of weeks, maybe they'd stay a month, maybe they'd come back for a semester, because it was such a fulfilling experience. You may know the answer to this question. How much does it cost those kids? Nothing. It doesn't cost those kids a dime. The flight, taken care of. Top-notch tour guide, don't even have to tip him. Luxury buses, air conditioning always works. Comfortable lodging, maybe not David Citadel, but it's pretty good. It's free, and it's the most popular thing in the Jewish world today. 170,000 Jews are hopping on planes and heading to Israel. So last week, Rob Eshman, the editor of the Jewish Journal, wrote about it.